Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Code Remix Weekly. I'm your usual host, Sam, and my co host, Tim, has inexplicably gone missing. Now, I say inexplicable, but it could probably be explicated if I were to go look at the messages he'd sent or the time off calendar, but that all sounds like a lot of work, so instead, I've initiated a massive manhunt all across the Netherlands. Police are involved, embassies have been contacted. Wherever Tim runs, he cannot hide, and he will be back as usual next week. But until Tim can be tracked down and dragged back to his computer desk, let's go over the announcements we have this week. Top of the list, new release of Open Rewrite. 8.60.0 has quite a number of bug fixes going into it, and some other new features. I've personally been busy working away on improving the Gradle dependency management recipes, but my work is not yet done. So I might put out a little patch release with some of that work in a day or two here. But aside from that, there are now some new recipes, not in the downstream recipe modules, about adopting switch expressions, the Java 17 feature to make your switches more expressive and powerful and pattern matchy. There are some logging recipes related to JBoss. There are new Maven best practices to keep your palms spick and span. Declarative recipes should now be showing more recipe author attribution. I remember implementing that in the past, but maybe there was a bug fix around some authors not being shown. So if you felt that you had contributed to a declarative recipe and weren't getting the proper credit in the UI where we display who works on what recipe, hopefully now you should be. There are also more static analysis recipes going into common static analysis and Groovy and HCL parser fixes. So lots of good stuff in 860. And then we've got a couple blog posts that are out now, implementing large scale code changes with Moderne. Talking about all the ways that you can get stuff done with automated refactoring tools. Similarly, we have a new blog post about modernizing legacy code, staying on track after 30 years of Java. Uh, and this is, all about similar themes in terms of keeping a code base up to date, that even if it is a large one that may have existed for a long time. So be sure to check that one out. And then, oops. And then we have put out our new edition of our monthly newsletter. So if that sounds at all interesting to you, you should definitely check that out. We've talked with Choice Hotels, we talked with application security people. There's some new stuff in here about C# and .NET recipes going out, and a listing of some conferences we're going to be at. We're going to be at Gartner in London. I personally am going to be at the Swamp Up conference in California in September, so you could stop by and say hi to me there. And for the Germans and others for whom it is just a quick train ride away, Merlin is going to be at the Saxony Day Jug. So look forward to that. Oh, and Microsoft Retail did a highlight on that mentions Open Rewrite and Moderne, which that's always pretty cool to see some of the big guys taking notice of what we do here. So I haven't liked that one myself yet. There we go. Okay, so I think that's roughly all the announcements we have for this week, which brings us to our guest, Moderne engineer on the platform team who has been working hard on the latest versions of the Moderne CLI. Please welcome to the program, Jamie. What's up, Jamie? How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, doing good. It's a I was about to say a lovely day here in Seattle, but it's quite overcast actually. It's a bit cloudy, but that also means that it's a little bit cooler. Yesterday was quite hot, getting up into like 90 degrees almost, which might not sound like much to people used to deeper heat waves, but is unexpected at times here in Seattle. How's the circumstances where you are? Where are you anyway?
Oh, I'm based in Toronto, Canada.
Right
It's
on.
it's been quite it's been quite hot, quite a large heat wave. A lot
Yeah.
of warnings of forest fires and unfortunately, like poor air
Yeah.
quality.
Yeah, the air quality has been dropping around here too. You could see it in the tone of the light that it is being filtered through, that the sunlight is being filtered through particulates, but it's still relatively mild. It hasn't yet reached like red sun and an ash gray sky level as it sometimes does if there's a big forest fire right downwind.
Yeah, I I'm just praying for rain. Really, it's hopefully cool down the weather and make it at least bearable.
Yeah, that would be nice. Do you have any air conditioning or no?
Oh yeah, I would not be surviving. You probably see me in just like a pool of sweat streaming down my face right now if that wasn't on.
Nice, nice. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I got some a heat pump installed at our house um, a year or two ago after a big heat wave, and we've definitely been appreciating that we have access to that now. And yeah, since it doesn't since the heat is transferred in mineral oil solutions through lines, the units aren't doing like direct exchange with the outside air. So if there is smoke in the air, that's nice. That it's not like bringing it. I don't have to choose between like bringing in smoky air and cooling down the interior. So we'll keep hanging in there, Jamie. So you've been working on the CLI for a while there, and we've put out a new release. Which was the version number that this all kind of went out in? We kind of did the big switch over of the back end stuff that we're here to talk about today.
So the major release where I think majority of what we're going to be talking about is 3.44.0
Mm-hmm.
was where we made the huge change.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think it's kind of I think we were briefly talking about this before. It's kind of funny
Sure.
is that this is a big change for us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but on the surface level, like if you've used your CLI before, it's kind of hard to notice. It's kind of like playing a Where's Waldo of like, oh, has this really changed that much?
Yeah,
But
one of those back end oriented refactorings. Yeah.
yeah, but like, but like it's, but like if you, this was actually a very scary release for us, just because it was almost a release that like touched literally almost every single thing in the
Yeah.
CLI.
Yeah, lot of potential for regression there, absolutely. So what was the motivation for this, right? Like why did we put a lot of work and take on risk of customer backlash if we mess it up, uh, if the user facing changes are not so obvious? What's the motivation?
I think one reason is that like one big reason is that it's consistency too. If you look at
Yeah.
our product offering, like the SaaS offering, like we have an organizational structure of where your repos. Like if you
Hmm.
want to view the repos, you go through the org structure, the org
Hmm.
hierarchy that we present.
Right.
But prior to the release of 3.44, sorry, 3.44, it was more of a flat structure.
Mm.
Like when you did a clone of your repos and you worked on your local, it was just your repos all on one level.
Right. So, I guess just to give a kind of a visual here, and I'll share my screen again briefly. In like the SaaS UI, which I'll bring up here. So if we're talking about the SaaS UI, and we talk about organizations, any big company that needs, automated refactoring service is going to have a bunch of different repositories, and usually makes sense to group your repositories together by, logical, by like your org chart, right? The teams that work on a given set of repositories make an organization that groups those repositories together so that you can target recipes and to just that subgroup and get data tables for that subgroup. And this is hierarchical. You might have an organization representing the director, and all the managers under that director have sub organizations, and all the individual teams under those managers have organizations. You know, so this is the kind of hierarchy you're talking about, yeah. And this has long been kind of how the SaaS has operated, and we've kind of brought that to the CLI. Is that right?
Yeah, like I think it brings all out like when you start using the CLI and you start using the SaaS, there's familiarity between the two instead of like if that wasn't there, it'd be kind of a little jarring. Like why doesn't it
Hmm.
look like what I see why it doesn't look like what I'm seeing in the SaaS?
Hmm. Hmm.
I think it also goes down to like now that you have that, you can perform stuff like bring down bring similar to how we had the clone command. Like you can bring down like sync certain your orgs in the hierarchy down into your local, and then copy and then run recipes or builds to specific orgs on your local if you need it.
Yeah. So, for example, I can, if you do mod get sync modern default, I can bring down the default org from that SAS and have that written out to disk, copying all the pre-built AST files and optionally copying the source code of those repositories too. But if you're just running recipes, the start with the LST files are all you need. And I suppose one difference that is kind of immediately apparent is that whenever you do, well, one, we used to kind of say mod get clone, which is still there for now, but mod get clone is now just a deprecated alias for mod get sync. Yep, may be removed, but it just calls mod get sync, which is now kind of the one-stop shop for bringing down LST files and code together, um, for one-stop shop. And then one difference I think is worth noting here is that as you run this command and copy this org, any command that interacts with organizations is going to produce on disk a CSV file that you could use with other commands or share with another person even, in order to kind of replicate that working set of repositories. So we kind of like standardize this like CSV file as an input that all commands kind of operate on. They all produce it if it's relevant. They all as an output, and they all accept it as an input where a list of repositories is accepted. Isn't that right?
Yeah, there's a lot of different knobs. There's knobs and dials to turn, as you can see inside
Hmm.
this repo CSV. Like, what's the change set? Like the change set, where the origin came from, where you're publishing to. Like all that stuff can be defined, and or your org structure can be defined. Like aside from syncing from the modern, you can sync from this repo CSV, and
Hmm.
like it'll like replicate that org structure onto your disk.
Yeah. What's this alternate publish URL? I haven't looked at this before. Why do we need to? What's this?
It's if we try one, try a different one.
Okay, fair enough. I just don't recognize this format with this modern protocol and then a GUID and then an AST. This must be some like an identifier that's used to look up the file somewhere through some API. Yeah, I just hadn't noticed that before. I'll have to peek under the hood, figure out what that's about.
I do want to mention like real quickly like that repo CSV can look a little intimidating with like the numerous fields and everything, but like
Hmm.
at the basic, if you just want to say clone like a repo onto your machine, all you
Hmm.
need is just the clone URL column, and you can just
Hmm.
start off with that.
Yeah.
And if you start off with just that, like it will just clone all the repos that you need onto your local disk. And what org it treats that under, it just we have something of a notion of a root org, like the one
Hmm.
org that, if you think of the Lord of the Rings reference, the one org that rules them all. So
Hmm.
it'll be all listed under that root org, and that
Everything is implicitly parented under a synthetic root org kind of
yeah.
thing. Is this something you could demonstrate of like put together a little repos.csv and clone from that? I mean, I guess we could kind of trivially just create one. Well, I guess I might as well use Excel for it. Let's say I already have that open. So you're saying that all anyone needs to make an organization they can work on to start with, right? Is a clone URL column, yeah?
Yeah, if you just want to start working, all you need is just like the clone URL, and and if you run the sync command, we will
Mm-hmm.
read that repo CSV, bring the code down, and we will there's some other bits and bits that perform behind the scene that we will figure out. Okay, what is the main branch that we need to be checking out, and that's all going to be written onto your disk, and that information will be available for the CLI.
Gotcha. So to start with, I've written this all out to a default repos.csv file. So if I wanted to, clone this, mod git sync CSV, and then the path I want to clone into in the CSV file. So I'll say, what default to, and then default repos.csv. CSV must contain a file named clone URL. Did I not? Is that not what I did? What? Oh, maybe I closed it already. If I go back to, if I open up default repos again, it sure looks like, oops, didn't mean to do the shaky gesture to minimize everything. So it sure looks like I have a file or a column named clone URL here. It's case insensitive. It's default repos.csv. Not sure what I've done wrong here. Jamie, are you able to demonstrate that?
Let me do something quick, see if I can get something working here.
And then it's also possible that was, I just have some random snapshot build of the CLI that I built from source at some unspecified point. So that was not necessarily a release candidate build or anything like that. So it's possible. Let's see.
Let's see here. Just.
Are you ready to share your screen?
Oh, give me 1 second here.
Sure. Yeah, just let me know.
Just want to make sure that I got this right. Sure, go ahead. So I just put in a repos CSV, just something quick. So I should just be able to perform, just to show nothing up my sleeve. My typing always gets a lot worse when I'm having to do a live demo.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, and if you have someone like in my experience, my typing is at its absolute worst if I've just called over an engineer who I really respect to help me with the problem, and then as I'm trying to work on it and ask for their guidance and wisdom, then I just type like an absolute fool who's never seen a keyboard before.
Sounds about right. So as you can see, like I just ran the git sync CSV into this current directory of what I just wrote. You can see that now I have the open rewrite. It doesn't have any contents in it right now, and that's because by default we don't clone the sources. So if you wanted to clone the sources, you just have to do add flag with sources, and you can see it's syncing, it's downloading. See, it's already I didn't even specify a branch in my repo CSV. It detected that main was the branch from here, pulled it down.
Nice.
And if I list it, you can see now I have the contents, and I just started off with just a clone URL.
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna have to, after I've rebuilt a newer version of the CLI from source, I have to figure out why it didn't work when I tried it just now. I probably was just running on some random buggy build from 3.5 weeks ago or whatever. Yeah, okay, that's pretty cool. So if we have a hierarchical organization, we can use this to target recipes to just like one sub organization. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can start writing. Like if we were to clone from a higher level org,
Mhm.
and you wanted to run in context of a sub org, all you have to do
Mhm.
is just do something similar to just like
Mhm.
I had a run earlier. I can show you, but you can
Yeah,
see
it'd be great.
I can target. This probably not a good example, but like you can see that I was running this earlier for testing. Like I can target specific repos, but I can also target on specific orgs in context. So if I say run slash say the Moderne org,
Mhm.
it will run the recipe on that sub org, like all the repos within that sub org. This
Mhm.
won't run right now because there's nothing in that current repo. I
Mhm.
would have to, yeah, you would have to bear with me while I try to set up here.
Sure. I mean, I think it's worth showing the people like why don't we do that? Why don't we clone some hierarchical org from the app tenant and then run a recipe on one of the suborgs, and we could just do some real basic recipe like textual find, because what the recipe isn't super important. We're kind of showing how recipe runs work. So just to throw a suggestion out there, we could clone like the Netflix plus Spring org, like that one has some hierarchy to it, or
Sure.
or,
Let me clear out
or we could
this.
like clone like the Moderne. We could clone the Moderne org since it has the sub org for Moderne SaaS, and then just run a find for the word Moderne or something that'll have lots of hits.
Okay, so again, nothing up my sleeve. Sync Modern, and then let's see. Oh, there's a bunch of hidden directories, of course, because I
401 because these are private, and maybe I don't know, maybe you're not logged in or to something.
hmm,
Will it succeed if I do it? I'm curious.
yeah. Let me try Netflix and Spring.
Yeah, it might just be some authentication that you haven't done here. But Netflix and Spring is a public repository group, so you should have no problem syncing that one.
Oh, so oops, because this is
It's being split into multiple different command line arguments.
yeah. I need to quote it. So one thing I want to quickly mention, you see this message about like right here.
Mm-hmm.
This is because sync can potentially be a destructive
Mm-hmm.
command, because if orgs move because they tend to move or repos tend to move, sync does what the sync implies. It will try to like move repos into the right spot. So that's why it's asking me this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
See that you can see that it's doing like some of the destructive stuff I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, yeah, getting rid of the orgs that are no longer part of the new org you're talking about.
Yeah. And then and you can see that it's also downloading by default like the LSTs. And once again, being a live demo, I forgot to put in the parameter to pull in with sources.
It's faster if you don't download the sources, which is part of why it isn't the default. Since if you, for example, wanted to clone a large organization and be like, what versions of Java are in use, or where is this dependency used, and if you're doing like a search and not immediately looking to issue a bunch of pull requests, then then you just might not need the whole repository for recipe running.
Yeah. So
Nice, yeah.
as
So we're
yeah, as
cloning this whole hierarchy. Oh yeah, wait,
mhm.
what were you gonna say? Go ahead.
No, I was just saying like yes, it's just clone the whole hierarchy down into my local.
Hmm.
And then I'll try to run that run command I had earlier.
Yeah, that sounds worth a shot.
Yeah, this is kind of like interesting change for me, especially like I remember it's kind of a funny thing because I kind of got used to the old way the CLI worked because I started when I first started, it was
Hmm.
still like the flat repos org, and it's kind of funny that I was part of this major change afterwards, like very soon after.
Yeah, yeah. Right as you get used to the way it used to be.
But I think like overall, it's gonna just help people get used to its usage between this and the API. Plus, it helps us. Maybe in the further discussion is going to help us unlock a couple of things that we plan to experiment with later on.
Hmm. Is that anything you want to talk about today? Like, do you have do you have a vision for a bright future here? Like, what is Yeah, I'm
I
kind of
think
curious what you're alluding to.
I think one thing that we've kind of thought about a little bit, like our fearless leader Jonathan has thought about, is that like our code bases kind of had kind of a little bit of a split between like our recipe execution on the recipe
Hmm.
workers and
Hmm.
the CLI, like the logic
Ah,
work.
yes.
So, but now that we've put all this investment into the CLI, we're kind of wondering, can we leverage the work in the CLI to have like just one uniform code base, making it much more manageable for us to at the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah. Because historically, the SaaS existed before the CLI, right? And
Hmm.
we needed some way of running recipes there, and we came up with one. And then we created the CLI and put a lot of work into making it work well. And then at some point, it's like, wait, why are we maintaining two pieces of software that both run recipes on organizations and produce, patch files and data tables and all of that stuff? Why? Why not just have one? So yeah, CLI based recipe worker is yeah, a discussion I had heard, which could have a number of have a number of benefits. And and since the CLI has some capabilities the recipe worker doesn't, like it's pretty good at running recipes in parallel across many repositories. Like right now, each repository is handed out to a different worker. But with the CLI-based recipe workers, we might like hand out each recipe run to an individual worker, and then that one machine goes and runs the recipe in parallel across all the repositories on there, which you know might which could potentially give us some flexibility. We'll both like simplify the scheduling and distribution of those recipe jobs, and potentially make it so that like fewer but beefier recipe workers could get the job done, as opposed to having a lot of small recipe workers, which depending upon cloud pricing models might be advantageous, or it might at least be nice to have the flexibility. Do you know? It's kind of a maybe kind of a wonky question. Do you know if the plan is to still support distributing recipe runs over multiple machines, or would it always be one recipe run goes to one worker that just kind of chews through it in parallel mode with the CLI?
We're still experimenting with a couple of things. That's kind of like TBD. Like we're
Fair enough.
figuring out like what's going to be best.
Yeah.
But kind of like points to another feature that was also introduced. Like about, I'm going to go on another tangent here.
Yeah, please do.
Kind of points to another thing about what we released with 3.44 is default processing is parallel on commands that support it. Like you
That's right.
mentioned, like recipe runs. Like we by default, when you ran a recipe, unless you specify parallelism as a
Hmm.
parameter, it wasn't running your recipe runs in parallel. Now
Right.
now it's by default.
You could still set. You don't have to, since you could
Oh,
always still set the number of workers to one, and then
that's
you would
true.
essentially get serialized recipe execution. But most of the time, recipe execution is not I/O bound, since it's not doing any I/O at all until the end of the process. So it is an almost pure CPU workload, which is efficiently distributed across many cores. So if you have a bunch of cores, you might as well run in parallel most of the time. And
Yeah.
they're separate processes. You don't really have to worry about crosstalk between them for the most part. Although, since recipes are programs that could potentially attempt to do arbitrary, IO or network communication or whatever, it it's possible to create a recipe that would be problematic for, but if you're following our recommended ways of doing things, it really shouldn't ever come up. Yeah. So it looks like this organization clone is almost getting there. Netflix plus Spring is a big org. There's quite a few repositories that have come out
It is
from
quite a
those.
beefy, yeah, it is quite a beefy guy. I thank the audience in bearing with us watching paint dry right now.
Well, we just have to have engaging enough banter that whatever is on screen is acceptable. And I mean, let's be honest. Even when we're doing a really exciting demo where there's a lot of action happening, it's still mostly text in a terminal. It's kind of it's making it exciting to people always is a little bit both on the presenters and on the audience. It's self-selecting and being like, yeah, I am interested in this kind of technical stuff. I am interested in these tools. Uh, but yeah, when Jada has to go through these and try to find clips where we say something funny in order to put out a good YouTube short or a good TikTok or whatever, I sometimes I just sometimes pity that she has to take these engineering conversations and try to find a grain of humor or levity that might resonate with the more general audience. So yeah, so I guess while we wait for this command to complete, um, yeah, is there anything else about well, I had a small tip for people as when this version of the CLI came out, as you may have already noticed in Jamie's terminal there, using these nice Unicode characters for arrows and check marks and dots and things, and it all looks very appealing and dare I say modern. And when I first ran it in my console, I didn't see any of that. I saw the fallback characters for uh, for when Unicode is not available, but I knew my console supported Unicode, so I'm like, well, I want to see the fancy ligatures and everything like everyone else. Uh, why why do I not? And so this, at least for Windows users, is I'll share my screen again while we wait for yours. Is a thing that there's this concept of like a code page, which is like what character set you're using. And on Linux, it's like you talk about your region. So this is a Windows exclusive concept. Let's see if I will do this. And let's see, I'll share my screen briefly. If I didn't lose all my browser windows. Not that one, not that one. Oh, let's just restart sharing. Here we go. And this tip is applicable not just to our tools, but that this is a kind of more general thing about Windows and consoles. So if I say, mod build right there, and if you're just seeing like kind of the base kind of like ASCII characters like this rather than like the cute fancier ones, then that might be because your console's code page is set in such a way that it doesn't say it supports Unicode characters. So there's this change code page command that's down in like Windows System 32, and you can say, no, hey, I want to support Unicode, and the magic number for that is 65,001. And so if that code page is set in the console, then you'll get this nice display of Unicode characters, and you'll get the little arrow and the dot instead of the filler characters. So little Windows idiosyncrasy there. So if you know your console supports Unicode and this or other command line tools that should have rich text kind of features enabled, do not. That changing that code page can be a way to enable that. And as a user of of git bash, I just tend to put that in my bash RC so that every console I start will run the change code page command and enable Unicode support. So little tip to save others the time that I had spent on figuring out why my console was not as pretty as it could have been. All right, so back over to your screen share, Jamie. So it looks like the clone completed, and we cloned down the Netflix Spring Apache org, which is made of two suborgs, Apache and Netflix plus Spring. And so this allows us to target recipes to any of those suborgs.
Yeah, so you can target even like further down,
Mm-hmm.
further down, further down into like Spring or within the Netflix org itself if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna, unless you had one in mind, I'm just gonna have the prepared one that was in my
Yeah,
history.
sure. Any old recipe works.
So I'm just gonna use this change method. I was experimenting with something earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So like if I wanted to do Apache, I can go into Apache, and this will only run within the Apache org. I can drill down further into the other org, like if I wanted to go
Mm-hmm.
into Netflix and Spring, and then go into Spring. So, but for simplicity, I'm just going to do this. This will run the change method. And you can see that it's reading through the organizations, it's going through and looking and finding all the different repos underneath that org.
Mm-hmm.
This is not going to be a small one either, but you can see.
That's fine, but it's a pretty quick recipe, yeah. Since all you're doing is doing one change method, a large composite like the Spring Boot migration might have 1,000 steps like that. So yeah, you can see how quick it can run. It can be to run a single recipe on even a whole bunch of repositories uh, when when it's running in parallel, and when it's a small recipe, as this one is.
Yeah. So it's just nice these like it's similar to how you can like choose to run your recipe similar to the SAS like run it
Hmm.
against orgs, and this is we're kind of replicating the bit, making it very familiar with how it's used.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like again, we still preserve a lot of the functionality that was before, so it shouldn't be too shocking. Like say you wanted to run your recipe within a repo, you can still do that. Like you can just run
Of
it in
course.
context within. So like I said, it's nothing huge to the user really changes. Like do you do like you touched on it earlier about the
Hmm.
UI. Like
Hmm.
the UI, we did make some changes to messaging and UI to make it a little bit. We hope to make it a little bit cleaner and more readable for users, and we've also adjusted like fallbacks to, like you said, like some of the icons. We check to see, is this supported? If not, then just fall back slowly, see what is supported.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's also like little. There's also been a lot of like, it's too many to mention, like a lot of
Sure.
quality of life kind of like changes
Yeah.
we've made. Like we
One
short.
quality of life change that I want to mention, because I personally lobbied for it, was that when you do mod build or mod run, one of the useful features of the command line is that it tries to automatically detect what JDK version is appropriate for a given repository, which there isn't always like a clear sign, right? Like this often, I mean, maybe you use like SDK man or JEnv, and there's like a file that explicitly says use JDK 21 for this, but often there isn't. And if there is, we take that into account. So there's a bunch of heuristics and fallbacks to be like, well, use this version of Gradle and this version of this dependency. So this repository requires at least Java 11 and, like up to Java 21 kind of thing. And that makes it a lot, much easier to run JDK commands across these repositories than it would be otherwise, right? Because if you just pick one, if you've got a selection of 300 repositories from your company and they're not all on the same JDK version, well, it would be a pain not to have that kind of auto detection, right? So mod build and mod run benefit from that. And in the latest version of the CLI that just went out, I made a change that when you do mod exec, it will set Java home for that sub process running in each repository according to our detected or configured Java version. So it should be a bit easier to use mod exec to run Java-based commands in subdirectories now, as it will get benefit from the same kind of auto detection that the other commands benefit from. But yeah, I interrupted you, Jamie, as you were going to be talking about a similar or some other enhancement.
Oh, it's just like small little things. There's many little things around. Like one, for example, is like we have shortened like the links, so you don't get like a links to like logs or so like links to other resources.
Hmm.
So it would just be like shortened links that you can click into and it'll take you, instead of your terminal being filled up with like a large line of characters.
Yeah, yeah, like I have here from this run or from this build I did, all these underlined things. And this is something just another kind of like general command line console usage tip that I often see people in their terminals like selecting a link or a path and then going and opening it separately. And in most terminals, you can just like control click, or I think on Mac option click, and it'll follow a URL to some file on your local file system, and open that up in whatever the default kind of program for that is. So I'm always, it's like when you're watching someone like hunt and peck typing, you almost want to be like, oh, just let me do it. It's one of those things where when I watch someone like slowly copying and pasting a URL around, where I'm like, just click it. You can just click the hyperlink and go there. But yeah, that's a nice little usability improvement.
Oh, I did want to add something on like on the engineering side of things too.
Sure.
I mentioned quickly is one thing that we've added that will benefit the users in the long run is we've now added like a test harness on the CLI where we're actually running the commands in the CLI commands in unit tests, and that's greatly benefited in the stability and us being more confident in the 3.44 release, because we've leveraged Claude Code, especially with the latest model. So what we
Mhm.
did was we took the test harness and we provided with a few sample
Mhm.
unit tests of like how we expected it. And not when you write unit tests, it's hard to cover all scenarios. Sometimes you might miss one scenario, and it could be kind of
For
a
sure.
grind. But
Mhm.
when we used Claude Code to help us we actually it actually generated the unit test with the test harness quite well, and it
Mhm.
had a lot of coverage that like help us catch a lot of code or like a lot of errors, and
Yeah.
it was super powerful for us to use, and we're super glad that we ended up using it to help us like expand our like test suite.
Yeah, yeah, I've definitely found it convenient for tasks like that. So long as you go and check and make sure that the tests are actually actually correct and not hallucinations, then that can provide a useful baseline for any further refactoring. Particularly if you're going to be AI assisted and making the product code changes as well, you really want a good test harness for it to check its assumptions against, and to be able to kind of like validate that what you have done with the assistant is good as much as possible. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've been finding that handy too. I've found myself sometimes giving like very like very targeted instructions, even when I'm coding manually, of like I have like last night I was working on something and I had a method that accepted two non-nullable parameters, and I was like, well, it would actually be convenient for the caller if this could accept if either of these could be null or empty, and if one was null, it would return the other, and if the other was null, it would return the first one, or if they were both null, it would return an empty list kind of thing. And so, I just I gave Claude that very specific instruction. So I'm just like, I just don't feel like writing a sequence of null checks right here. And and so for even just those little things, I'm like, it's kind of nice just to be able to tell a system to go do that kind of thing for me. Do you? I know Jonathan is a big fan of Whisper Flow, which is another like a voice transcription tool where you can just pop a hotkey, speak a line of text, or speak a line of text, speak and then have it transformed into a line of text for you, so that you could just give your coding agents orders faster than you could type them. That I don't know. I've never liked talking to my computer, and I find that when um, that I like seeing what I'm writing, that when I do the dictation, like, because you speak and then it turns the whole line of like all of what you just said into text kind of in one go, and I'm like, I almost want to see it more like word by word as it comes out. I don't know. I'm just not entirely used to the text to speech thing yet, so I'm curious if you have been using the or speech to text. Have you been using a speech to text? Or are you typing all of your Claude interactions?
I do a little bit of both. I do a little bit of both. Like I've also started playing around with Whisper.
Mm-hmm.
I find myself doing like if I have a quick thought, find
Mm-hmm.
myself using Whisper to just speak really quickly to get the entries
Mm-hmm.
down on my quick thoughts, and then
Mm-hmm.
having it help me that way.
Mm-hmm.
And using Whisper also has helped me like quickly, like if I'm flipping between tasks or messages, especially with Slack, I can get it done a little bit more quickly, like get my
Mm-hmm.
thoughts down and
Yeah.
then quickly switch back. So I've been finding it useful in that way, using the speech to text at least.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Well, let's see. I think we've covered a decent number of topics today. Do you notice we're having some of these? It looks like we're getting generating some patches successfully, and a few errors are popping up on some of these repositories. I'll be curious to look at that later. But I think we have kind of already demonstrated how syncing of repositories is related to organization structure in a way it wasn't before. How you can use that to target recipes to subgroups, and how you can um, yeah. Yeah. Was there anything else we wanted to be sure to cover or let the people know about?
Um, Not off the top of my head. Like there's probably like a lot of like I said, like a lot of little quality of life things that we've put in that
Yeah.
escape me right now. But like I'll let them be like Easter eggs of like, oh, I'm pleasantly surprised that it does this now.
Yeah, there's that. We also do put out patch notes for the CLI releases, right?
Yes.
Where do those live now? Are they on
Uh,
docs.moderne.io? We've got I see the CLI there, but it mentions the latest version, but I don't see. Is it in the CLI reference docs? No, this is in the commands. Where are we publishing those patch notes? Oh, it was like a GitHub page for it, right?
yeah. Let me see.
So there's Moderne docs, there's code mods, recipe starter. Here, I think I found it. Moderne CLI releases. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and share my screen then. So yeah, we've there's now on GitHub Moderne CLI releases. Any CLI releases we do the get noted here with well, I guess we haven't put. Looks like this is automated. So this is just recording versions. So it looks like we're not actually copying over the release notes to here yet, although I do understand that that is the intention. So this notes that a release exists, but we should probably actually get the real release notes over here, as there are, real release notes. Like, go over to the private Modern CLI repository, like we go to the trouble of writing down what has changed in a given build, or like GitHub note what has changed in a given build. So we should probably be publishing this somewhere, because I know we've gotten requests for that, and I think that's a very reasonable thing. Anyway, we'll make improvements there. Go ever onward, ever upward into a glorious future. Well, thanks for joining me today, Jamie. I don't know if there's anything else we want to cover. Um, so, uh, Yeah, that. Thanks for joining me today, Jamie, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Yeah, thank you for having me on and letting me talk about the CLI changes.
Yeah, yeah, right on. Always nice to have a guest. All right, everyone. I think that's our stream for the week, and see you all in the Open Rewrite community Slack. Until next week, bye bye, and have a good one. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Yeah.